Alright, it's time for another DPS research video here in World of Warcraft. This time, a Warlock, but not just any Warlock. We're talking about the most absolute dogshit dungeon class, or dungeon spec in the game. So, that's right, the Affliction Warlock. If you don't know, Affliction is the worst spec for dungeons in the game. If we go to some stats here, here's Mythic Plus DPS popularity, essentially. For people who have timed keys level 20 and higher. So, like, Havoc Demon Hunter is really popular. Ret Paladin's really popular, especially with the buffs from a couple weeks ago. But if we look at the Warlock, top is Demonology Warlock. And then way down here is the Destruction Warlock. And next to that is an invisibly tiny pillar of Affliction Warlocks. So I don't even know how few Affliction Warlocks have completed a level 20 key. If you go to, like, Shaman, you see 22,000 Elemental Shamans is a tiny sliver, or Frost DK, 19,000. Frost DK used to be competing for the worst spec in dungeons on the melee side of things. They buffed it 4% damage a couple weeks ago. Frost DK is still really, really bad, but just comparing you to those to give you an idea of how extremely unplayed the Affliction Warlock is. Because even Destruction is pretty bad. But here's another thing. So this is just entirely based on data of the highest key levels that are run for each spec. So if we go into here, we could actually see supposedly a plus 27 key was completed by an Affliction Warlock. But obviously that's compared to, like, the best key level, that's 2 levels lower than the best key level for any other DPS spec. So that's oh wait, no, actually it's one. Feral Druid is actually only 1 key level higher. Although Feral Druid did get some buffs a couple weeks ago, so Feral Druid's not as bad as it used to be. But I have not been playing Feral Druid, so I don't know how bad it is. There's only a few specs I have not been playing. So I don't really know anything about them currently. So one of them is Discipline Priest, but I don't really know the healers and tanks in general very well. I've been playing all the other ones, but not in, like, difficult content, so I don't have a good feel for how good they are when it actually matters. Because currently my favorite healer is Preservation Evoker, because it's just very easy to do good damage on the Preservation Evoker. But that's just very that's just spamming heroic dungeons, getting satchels, that type of thing. But anyways, let's get back to the topic at hand. The horrible, horrible, horrible Affliction Warlock. as with previously, we're still gonna focus just on the single target damage rotation here. We're gonna start off with simming my current build for it. And we're not gonna really worry about too much about what really makes the Affliction Warlock bad in dungeons, which is more so the AoE. Not that AoE is terrible. Affliction Warlock can do surprisingly good AoE. Specifically, when you use Vile Taint, it applies Agony on multiple targets. And then Agony dot ticks have a chance to give you soul shards, and you want to spend all those soul shards in AoE on Seed of Corruption. And those Seed of Corruption explosions actually do a significant amount of damage. So you see there, I had before I stopped casting there, I had about 75% of my damage was just the Seed of Corruption explosions. So you actually do very good damage with that. The problem is, as soon as those agonies are running out of duration, if you don't reapply those agonies, then you lose the agony stacks. So you lose a lot of agony damage from that, of course, but also, like I said, the agony damage has a chance to give you soul shards. So you lose your way to keep doing AoE damage if those agonies run out. And unfortunately, Vile Taint is a 30-second cooldown, while the agony only lasts 18 seconds. So it's very similar to the problem that Shadow Priest had for a long time, which was that Shadow Crash was on a 30-second cooldown. So you Shadow Crash, and if the enemies don't die before your Vampiric Touch and Shadow Word Pain expire, then you lose not only the dot damage, but you are no longer spreading the damage with Psychic Link. So like your damage as a Shadow Priest is highly dependent on having those dots up. So you would have to manually recast those dots. So Shadow Priest had a very similar problem for a long time, and at some point they buffed the Shadow Crash to be a 20-second cooldown, and the Shadow Priest dots also last 21 seconds, I believe, so slightly longer than Agony. Because if you made Vile Taint a 20-second cooldown, it wouldn't be enough to refresh Agony to keep the Agony stacks. So it would still kind of suck even at a 20-second cooldown. It would definitely be a lot better though, just to allow you to keep generating the soul shards to keep spamming Seed of Corruptions. But yeah, they definitely need to do something, some kind of rework would be ideal, but they at least needed to do something to allow you to like extend Agony duration, or apply it to multiple targets easier or something. It's like another dot class, for example, is the Moonkin, the Balance Druid, that is. So you look at Moonfire, there's a thing for Moonfire where if you cast Moonfire, it will apply not only to your target, but another nearby target. And it will prefer targets that don't already have Moonfire on it. So when you are trying to apply Moonfire to multiple targets, it goes a lot faster when it's applying to 2 targets at once compared to Agony 1 target at a time type of thing. So that's another way they could improve the Affliction Warlock significantly. And then the other thing, though, is in a dungeon situation, a good chunk of your damage is going to end up being this talent here, Soul Flame, assuming you get this talent. Whoops. I was testing something earlier. This is... I do recommend Drain Soul here. So Soul Flame, if you've got like dots on an enemy and the enemy dies, then it'll explode, even if it's not your dots that killed them. So this gives you a bunch more AoE damage in dungeons. So yeah, that is pretty useful. Maybe on like fortified dungeons, the damage that gives might not be that good, so I'm not sure if it really scales that well into more difficult dungeon type situations. So I don't know. Maybe it's not that good, but in lower level dungeons, at least, that is a massive amount of AoE damage that you get out of that. Another thing they could do with the Affliction Warlock, though, is if you looked at there's a sudden demise talent for the Assassination Rogue, which when the enemy gets to 30% health, I think. Well, so the text of it says that if you have 150% of the enemy's remaining health in bleed damage, then the enemy dies instantly. But that's not how the talent actually works in practice. I don't know if it might be like technically bugged or something. But what happens with that sudden demise talent is essentially a lot of the Assassination Rogue bleed damage kind of used to go to waste. But now with that, it'll just kind of instantly kill enemies at low health. If you have a lot of bleed damage on them, such as Rupture and Garrote. So if they had something like that, so that Warlock, Affliction Warlock damage over time, like did something fancy, or maybe they could like build it into this where the explosion damage when the enemy dies depends on how much damage over time is left on them or something like that. That would also be another way that they could make Affliction way, way better than it currently is. But we have kind of gone off topic, so we want to actually worry about the single target rotation for now. So let's look at Warlock abilities first. Affliction Warlock abilities are well, and then this is all going to be in context of course, this specific talent build, which is my current favorite talent build for doing dungeons. I don't know if it's the best talent build, but hey, it is what it is. So we are going Grimoire of Sacrifice, so usually you're going to be going with the Fell Hunter pet so that you do have an interrupt. And then you'll sacrifice that guy, and then your spells will do extra damage sometimes. It'll show up in the damage meter. And it's not really that much better than your pet for a single target. And you do lose your Fell Hunter's ability to purge a magical effect from your target. So it's not super great in single target, I would say. But it does more damage than your pet would in AoE situations, because the pet just does not do any AoE damage at all. So that's more so why I'm running that talent. So yeah, the general thing for the Affliction Warlock is get a bunch of dots on the enemy. When we're talking about single target damage rotation, that is. And then once you have essentially as many dots as possible, you're going to cast Malefic Rupture, which will deal more damage for each dot on the enemy. So that's why you want to get as many dots on the enemy as possible. So kind of your basic dots are Corruption and Agony. Corruption is just a basic regular dot. Agony, if you don't know, as it deals damage, it stacks up more and more, so that the actual damage it does increases over time. So that's really, really weak when it comes to enemies that die quickly, but very strong on bosses and raid bosses, where it's gonna spend most of its time at maximum stacks. Because as long as you refresh it before it expires, then it'll stay at the number of stacks that it was. So yeah, Corruption and Agony are the basic dots, and then you get Unstable Affliction, which does a ton of damage. But you can only have Unstable Affliction on one target at a time. If you cast it on another target, it will remove it from this target, so only one at a time. So that's, for a single target, that's 3 that you're gonna have. And then specifically, if you're trying to like, Malefic Rupture ends up being a pretty good chunk of your damage if you spec for that. And part of specking for that is this Siphon Life talent. So Siphon Life is another dot. It is not particularly strong, but I get it for a couple reasons. One of them is to make Malefic Rupture stronger. But the other one is the build that I like to do. I'm using this talent over here called Pandemic Invocation, and what happens there is refreshing Corruption, Agony, Unstable Affliction, or Siphon Life with less than 5 seconds remaining will deal 5,000 instant damage. So that's with my item levels, of course, as usual. Not sure if I mentioned earlier in the video, always looking at all these classes at a very casual item level. Like you can start doing mythic +2s at this eye level. You might have trouble getting groups because it's much easier for people to, like, it's fairly easy for people to generally find higher item level people than this item level, but very casual item level, not using the trinkets, no enchants, no gems, no tier set bonus. So yeah, just in big picture type of thing, like 50k DPS is around what we're usually doing at this item level, but it varies from spec to spec. We're talking about strictly single target situations like this. The Frost Mage that we were looking at last time was about 60k DPS, so Frost Mage was very good, but yeah, a lot of these specs are closer to 50k, maybe slightly over 50k, or I don't recall. I think my Arms Warrior might have been slightly under, but I don't remember if I actually finished adding all the cooldowns in there. That might have been before I added using Avatar. So yeah, it also just depends exactly on the build, because I'm looking at all the builds, or sorry, I'm looking at all the specs in some kind of dungeon build where we are simming single target damage, but we're not spec'd for purely maximizing the single target damage. So, yeah. Anyways, so yeah, so like in the grand scheme of things, this 5k damage is not that much, but if you look at each dot, for example, if you cast Corruption, the Corruption itself is only doing 21k damage from a cast. If you cast Siphon Life, it's only doing 20k damage from a cast. Like I said earlier, Unstable Affliction is a lot more damage per cast, so it lasts a little bit longer, but it's 84k damage from a cast. And then Agony, the number they give you here is, I think, based on it's starting off. Well, with the talent here, it starts at 4 stacks, but I think it's oh, I wanted to actually. We're gonna let it expire here and then recast it, and then we're just gonna keep in combat here till it expires and to see the total amount of damage that Agony does. Okay, Agony, I don't know, is that right? Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how that works. Let's put it that way. I don't know exactly how much damage Agony does. It does generally Oh, but it was still ramping. Yeah. The number on the tooltip, I don't know if that's like all the ramping takes up until it expires, and then when you refresh it, then it'll be more than 64,000 damage in a cast, or how exactly that works. Let's just leave it at that. I don't know exactly what that number means, or what that number represents, but agony is, in addition to unstable affliction, agony is a lot more damage per cast than corruption or siphon life, but with the pandemic invocation, it just adds a good amount of damage per cast in those situations on bosses where you're refreshing those abilities. So yeah, there's definitely different talents you can get. Like you could go for the corruption is permanent, so instead of siphon life, so in that case you wouldn't have to refresh corruption ever, and you wouldn't have siphon life to refresh either. So if you did that, you would not get pandemic invocation at all, because then you're only worrying about refreshing your agony and your unstable affliction, and potentially haunt if you're getting that talent. So there's definitely different ways to play it. I have not simmed to try to figure out like what's actually the best build or whatever, but this is just the build I like to play. So we are, yeah, getting agony and corruption and unstable affliction on the enemies and siphon life, and we're doing malefic ruptures with all that stuff on there to get good malefic rupture damage, and then we are worrying about refreshing those one at a time. And then the other farther down parts of my build are very focused. A lot of this is focused on single target damage. I'm not a fan of Dark Glare. Soul Rot is kind of okay. The issue with Soul Rot is it doesn't really make sense to go Soul Rot unless you're going for the Drain Life build, of course. But the problem with the Drain Life build is that it only stacks up quickly in situations where you have your agony on multiple targets. So it's not good for it's only good for like killing trashbacks basically. So that's what I don't like about Soul Rot. Because like I said earlier, you get plenty of AoE damage out of Seed of Corruption. You have to have this 2 additional seeds, by the way, to have good Seed of Corruption explosion damage. And like I said, the Soul Flame does pretty significant damage. But yeah. So the rest of this stuff is essentially focused on single target damage. So Malefic Rupture does extra damage to targets suffering from an unstable affliction. Like I said, unstable affliction can only be on one target at once, so that's single target damage. Shadow Bolt and Drain Soul damage is single target damage. Drain Soul replaces Shadow Bolt all the way. So yeah. So that's single target damage, which you only get value out of when you have multiple dots on an enemy. So yeah, you won't really get any use out of that in AoE situations, unless you manage to run out of soul shards. But yeah, in that case, generally you want to drain soul on any low hit point enemies, because if they die while you're draining their soul, then you get a soul shard. But also, you get extra damage. It's 100% extra damage to enemies below 20% health. So, drain soul, pretty good. Not super good, but like it's useful. Let's put it that way. Unfortunately, Shadow Bolt is just really garbage though. Shadow Bolt does not generate soul shards like how Incinerate generates soul shard fragments for Destruction Warlock, or Shadow Bolt generates soul shards for Demonology Warlock. So yeah. So yeah, not great. It's like your lowest filler spell still, but whatever. But anyways, so Haunt. Let's talk about Haunt. So Haunt deals damage to the enemy and increases the damage that they take from you for a period of time. Haunt is not actually a damage over time ability, so it does not... you can't get any Malefic Rupture value out of it. So I'm not sure if it's worth... I'm not sure if Haunt is like really that good. Without putting these extra points down here, where Haunt also increases the damage of your damage over time effects on all targets by 20% while active. So because of that, that's really why I'm getting Haunt. Because just 10% extra damage, but having to refresh it every 18 seconds is not very appealing. But yeah, like I said earlier, the Soul Rot talent's over here, not very great. And Wrath of Consumption, you would think it's pretty good for a dungeon situation, because like when enemies are dying, then you're getting this this 15% periodic damage buff for 30 seconds. But as soon as you get to like a boss fight that doesn't have ads, then it's like that damage over time buff is going to fall off. So it's like that's what I don't like about that talent. And then I'm just not a fan of Dark Glare at all, so I can't really justify going for that talent. It's like if it was here where Soul Rot is, I would definitely change something to get that, but where it's at, I'm not a fan of it. But it's probably... You could probably, like, if you didn't want to go with Haunt, you could probably get that. The other side here, so we have Tormented Crescendo, which causes your drained soul to have a chance to give you a free Malefic Rupture when you have Agony, Corruption, and Unstable Affliction on the target. So obviously that's good single target damage talent. And then the ones over here, are more single target damage as well. And specifically, Malefic Rupture causes your damage over time effects to deal extra damage for 8 seconds in the single target situation with that talent. This other one's a AoE. An AoE type of thing, but it's when you have an unstable affliction on an enemy, and then the Seed of Corruptions explodes. So it's like kind of weird. You're casting like your big single target dot, and then you're casting Seed of Corruptions to get extra damage out of that. I don't know. I don't think it's worth giving up the single target damage. Let's put it that way. So yeah. So my UI is this one's Unstable Affliction, this one's Agony, this one's Corruption, this one is Siphon Life, and this one is Haunt. So these are just telling me that I need to cast those on the targets, but it's, you know, it's up to me to prioritize them properly. So the main one is never let Agony expire. So, but I don't know if it's best to cast Agony first or if it's best to cast Unstable Corruption first. They are both very good, but yeah. And then I don't know if it's worth casting Haunt before these the weaker dots, but yeah. In any case, you want to get all your dots up and Haunt, since Haunt's technically not a dot, and then you got Soul Shards. You want to Malefic Rupture, of course, and then as the things are expiring, you're going to refresh them. Now, my UI is already set up to tell me that they are expiring soon. So I don't have to watch these stupid cooldown swipe things on the icons. So yeah. So you'll do lots of dot damage. And Malefic Rupture when you can. And then if you don't have any soul shards to Malefic Rupture, that's when you're gonna be draining soul. And then my UI has a little thing on the left, a little purple thing for when it's a proc. It's this one. So it's a proc for the drain soul to deal damage faster, and then on the right is the proc for the free Malefic Rupture. So with this build, you spend a lot of time refreshing dots, which is how you get value out of the Pandemic Invocation talent, of course. But of course that means so in turn that means you're not spamming Malefic Rupture quite as hard, and you're not really like running out of soul shards that frequently. And it also means that you're not really draining soul that much. Because you're spending so much time just refreshing your dots, so it's possible that this build kind of sucks in that we are buffing Shadow Bolt and Drain Soul. Like we have talents to buff that, but we're not really maximizing the value of that talent. That's where we're really built around maximizing the Malefic Rupture and the Endemic Invocation. So that's kind of how the build plays. So you see here, Pandemic Invocation is somewhere around 4% of the single target DPS. That's just the so 4% for single target for a 1-point talent is pretty good. As far as talents go in this game. But like I said, if you are not going Siphon Life, then you are not gonna be going Pandemic Invocation. So there's definitely a trade-off there. So I don't know if it's the best build, but this is how I like to play it. But let's finally get to actually simming the damn thing. Oh, and yeah, with this build specifically, since I don't have Dark Glare, I'm not really using any kind of cooldown for single target damage. The closest thing is really Vile Taint. You can use Vile Taint. It costs a soul shard though. It does cost a soul shard, but Vile Taint does damage over time in addition to applying agony to the target. So you can use it in single target to have an additional damage over time for the Malefic Rupture to do a bit more damage as well if you cast Malefic Rupture during the Vile Taint dot. So but that's really it's a little bit harder to manage, and because it casts the soul shard, you've got to get like a couple Malefic Ruptures out of it to actually make that worthwhile in single target. So it's something I often don't even bother with. But yeah, let's sim what we got. Let's sim what we got. What do I want? I want SimC. I still have not updated my SimC program, but that's okay because they fucking never buff Affliction Warlock. So, I had tested this at some point, but we're gonna do some stuff. We're gonna delete all this extra crap here. This gear from bags we don't need. We're gonna do what we did on the Frost Mage, which is we're gonna turn off the trinkets. We're essentially gonna unequip the trinkets, and we're gonna get the same fake enchantment thing on here. So I get the int from my trinkets without the without the thing trying to use my trinkets, because that'll... We don't want to see my damage with me using the trinkets. Since as I have said many times before, trinket balance is really bad, so like I have multiple trinkets that some of them are much better than others, so we're just sticking with unused trinkets that we are not using. Alright. So, yeah. We're going to do that, and we're going to simulate that, but let me make sure we have all these stupid buffs off and stuff, and yeah. See how that simulation goes. Alright, so they're saying this Affliction Warlock is going to be doing 55k DPS. Let's make sure there's not any weird stuff in here that should not be in here, though. Oops. We didn't turn off flasks and stuff, so we do need to get that in there. This stuff here overrides. Fortunately, every time you restart the program, this override section gets wiped, so I have to copy paste that in there each time. So yeah, we are not a 55k DPS. We're going to be a bit lower than that. We are 50,500 DPS. Okay. Unfortunate, but that's how it is. Of course, that's using their default action priority list, which we are now going to write our own. So, not sure if... Not sure how good theirs is. We might do worse, or we might do slightly better. Yeah. We'll see. Because a lot of these times, these things are kind of made for specific builds, and if you're not using like the meta talents or whatever that they are expecting you to have, then it might not be the optimal way for you to do DPS. So that's why we're gonna build our own rotation here. So let's see, we need to go in here, and we're just gonna copy wait, let me actually delete. We'll copy the Frostmage one. That's the most recent one I've done. So we're gonna say Warlock, Affliction, APL. And let's get rid of that other result here. So this is the one that we're gonna try to get our DPS up to. Wait, are they... I just want to check something real quick. Are they doing... Yeah, Grimoire of Sacrifice. Okay. Yep. Good. Let's close that, get that out of the way. Let's go. We need to open this up. All right, pre-combat. We need to... I don't know the syntax for this. Let's go over here. Let's see what information they have specifically for warlocks, if there's anything. Why aren't they telling me what the default soul shards? Does the thing start with 3 soul shards by default? I don't know. Let's look at the result really quick down here. Yeah, I think they're starting with 3 soul shards. Yes, yes. Alright. So, bolt pit. Go back to this. Bell Hunter. I think that's how we do this. And I think this is going to be summon pet, probably. And then we need to Grimoire of Sacrifice. Grimoire of Sacrifice. I'm just trying this. If this doesn't work, we'll just look at the actual Warlock APL and copy whatever the syntax is from there. Interesting. Nothing useful otherwise in there. Nothing that we need to worry about for this. Let's do copy this. Let me just move this. Can we move this to the end? I guess we can't move this. This UI is not terribly great now, is it? Alright, custom / Warlock Affliction APL. Alright. So, I'm thinking this is going to be relatively straightforward. Because like I said, this build does not really have any cooldowns to worry about. So let's see. We have Unstable Affliction. We have Corruption. We have Agony. We have Siphon Life. We have Haunt. We have Malefic Rupture. We have what's it called? Drain Life? Drain Soul. That's what I meant. This is Drain Life. We have Drain Soul. And we could put Vile Taint in there. And is that everything? Yeah. 1 dot, 2 dot, 3 dot, 4 dot, haunt, malefic rupture. Drain soul, vial tank. Yeah. I think that's it. So yeah, I'm expecting this to be a very simple APL, but we're gonna start off simple, of course. We're not gonna throw everything in there at once. We're gonna say, let's see how much damage we do just from keeping all our dots up. And yeah, I think still thinking unstable affliction is going to be optimal. To start with. So actions equals unstable affliction. And then we have to keep in mind that we don't want it to just spam unstable affliction over and over again. We only want to recast it if it's expiring soon, because we want to get this pandemic invocation buff up. So we're going to say if equals debuff dot unstable affliction dot, sorry, not debuff. I think we want dot, or maybe we can say if, maybe we can just say if dot, if equals remains less than. Now I'm going to say less than 6 here. So the thing is, it's we get the pandemic invocation damage if there's less than 5 seconds remaining, but the thing is, there's a cast time on unstable affliction. Now, corruption, agony, and siphon life are all instant casts, but unstable affliction has a cast time. Haunt also has a cast time, but haunt does not trigger pandemic invocation, so we don't gotta worry about that. Also, haunt has a cooldown. So haunt lasts 18 seconds. It has a cooldown of 15 seconds. So basically we just want to use haunt as often as possible. But we'll worry about that later. But yeah. Unstable affliction, if less than 5 seconds remains, I think is gonna be fine. And then we're going to put corruption in here. We're going to put agony in here. We're going to prioritize agony right after unstable affliction. Now, as far as refreshing them goes, if like I mentioned earlier, you never ever want the agony stacks to fall off. So that is kind of more important for refreshing. But I don't think we're going to have a situation where that's going to cause a problem as far as this action priority list goes. But we'll keep an eye on that. So we need to plus equals slash agony if equals remains less than 5 because it's instant. And then we're going to do the same with corruption. And the same with Siphon Life. And then we're gonna have Haunt in here. And I'm thinking just put Haunt at the bottom. I think let's just test that. Let's see if that works. Or if there's a problem with that. Alright, 24k DPS. Dealing damage with Agony, Corruption, Fell Barrage procs. Of course. I guess I don't think I actually mentioned it, but I'm using the Fell Barrage, or the Inquisitor's Gaze, which casts Fell Barrage randomly, and that does do a important piece of your single target DPS, but it's random. And then let's see. So Fell Barrage, Grimoire of Sacrifice we mentioned already. We got Haunt, which Haunt does upfront damage, but also is with the talent is increasing our total damage from the dots. And then Pandemic Invocations, that talent that's giving us damage from the refresh of those dots. And then Siphon Life dot and Unstable Affliction dot. So if we sort these by damage, Unstable Affliction is top damage, followed by Agony. I'm not sure if this thing shows uptime. I don't think it shows uptime of dots. Oh, it does. Okay. I was hoping it would show specifically like a start and refresh type of thing, like it shows with buffs. So that we could know for sure whether or not Agony ever fell off. So that's a little bit unfortunate. We were to look at details. Auras. We would be like, okay, in this case we had a Siphon Life that dropped off, for example. But yeah, I'm assuming so far with I'm assuming in general that Agony is not falling off. It shouldn't be falling off. We're not doing enough stuff yet for it to fall off. Now, that's just casting our dots and keeping our dots up. We need to... well, let's see. How much time are we wasting? We are spending over half of our time doing nothing. So... let us see... let us Malefic Rupture. Let's put it that way. Malefic Rupture. I should have just put copy pasted. Actions plus equals / malefic rupture. And this will naturally only malefic rupture if there is a soul shard to malefic rupture. Otherwise, it's gonna be waiting. So let's see how that does. Simulate. That's not good. Malefic rupture. Malefic rupture. Did I spell it wrong? Malefic rapture? What the fuck? It's been like at least a year where I thought this was Malefic Rupture. It's Malefic Rapture. What the fuck? That blows my mind. Calling it the wrong thing for so long. What the fuck? Alright. So now, using Malefic Rapture is going to be only when we have all the dots up. And Haunt. Haunt, I don't think does anything for Malefic Rapture, but we want to keep Haunt up for the dot damage. So, that gives us a significant boost. What is that? About 10k DPS. So now if we look at our DPS percent, Malefic Rapture is a pretty good chunk of our damage. Interesting. So yeah, it's not that Malefic Rapture itself is all that damage, but it's because of that talent. Malefic Rapture also causes them to take 30% extra damage from your dots for 8 seconds. So the uptime of that debuff on the enemies, I don't know if that shows it anywhere in here. Dread Touch. Red. I don't think that shows in here anywhere. But basically, that is has a very high uptime. It has a very high uptime. We're still waiting a very large chunk of our time though, so we need to put Drained Soul in here. But Drained Soul's got a little bit of issue, I guess. So let's say we want to drain soul at the very bottom, essentially. But the problem is drain soul lasts how long? 4.4 seconds. But if we have multiple dots that are expiring at the same time, and then we start casting Drain Soul right before they are all 5 seconds from expiring, then we really want to cancel the drain soul so that we can refresh those dots. So we have to do something special to do that. And I think I did it in my Shadow Priest thing, which I never finished actually doing. But we have to do this. Interrupt if equals 1. So say drain soul, interrupt if equals 1. So that will interrupt the drain soul if there is anything above that can be done. But then that leaves another issue, which is that when we have the Nightfall proc, which causes our Drain Soul to deal damage faster, then Drain Soul only lasts half as long, and it deals more damage. So it's not only... it's more total damage, in addition to just being double the DPS from casting, having half as long of a channel time. So I forgot about this little buff here. Actually, this is a debuff. But it lasts so long that you don't really need to like actually worry about refreshing it, but it is going to increase our damage a little bit from our Drain Soul cast, in addition to the direct damage of the Drain Soul spell. But anyways, so when we have Nightfall procs, we don't want to interrupt our Drain Soul, because then the Drain Soul only takes a couple seconds to cast. So that leaves enough time that we shouldn't have problems refreshing after the Drain Soul cast finishes. So the question is, do we ever want to prioritize Drain Soul over Malefic Rapture? And I don't know. So we're going to say Drain Soul if Nightfall proc. Actually, we're going to say, and then interrupt if anything better to do. So we're going to say here plus equals slash Drain Soul if equals buff dot nightfall dot up. Now Nightfall does stack. I don't think it stacks past 2 times. I don't know though. How about we try to figure that out real quick. I'm just gonna keep corruption up on these things, and we'll see if we ever get more than 2 stacks. I mean, it's not a super common proc, obviously, if it's freaking falling off when we're keeping corruption up on 5 enemies at a time. So, but that's actually a little bit confusing. I'm pretty sure it stacks twice. It's just very confusing to me right now. We need... Oh. Does it sick? Auras, Nightfall. I don't know, maybe it's just such a low thing. I feel like I've seen it stack twice. What's the thing I'm looking for? I'm looking for weak auras. I think I have a weak aura set up to show 2 stacks of it. That's why I'm like pretty sure I've seen it have 2 stacks. I don't know how many stacks it can have. I'm pretty sure it's at least 2. But so in some situations it may be worth theoretically prioritizing it higher if it's at max stacks. Oh yeah, I don't know what the max stacks. Let's just say to do. We'll just say to do. How many stacks can I get? We might want to prioritize something a little bit differently. I don't know. Whatever. Let's sim it. Sim it, sim it, sim it. So yeah, we have now added in Drain Soul, and that's going to be interrupted unless it has the Nightfall proc, and that's going to be a significant amount more damage here. And we're up to 48,000 DPS. Our soul shard amount, not so good. Let's look at our buffs here. For Nightfall procs. Zero refreshes. It says right here max stacks too. Wait, what is this thing? Trigger spell data. Not sure what's going on there. Not sure quite how you read this, but I think it can have 2 stacks. Interesting. So, question is, how can we do more damage? We have not yet put in the Vile Taint, but I'm not sure if I'm even going to use that anyways. Let's see. Did they use Vile Taint? I imagine they did. Yeah, Vile Taint, they did use it. But like I said, the the damage of using it, I'm not sure if it's really worth it. Let's see, how much damage did they do with some of this stuff? So they did 10k DPS with Malefic Rapture. Since I'm not using Vile Taint yet, they should have a little bit more than me probably with that, but okay, maybe not. Let's see, Unstable Affliction. At 9k, they're at 9k, Agony is at 8k. Yeah, I'm slightly lower on it, apparently. Brain Soul, 6.6k. They are at 7k Drain Soul. Few K for Corruption and a few K for Siphon Life, and more of Sacrifice a few K, El Barrage a few K. Wait, El Barrage, sorry, 2.3k. Okay. I'm actually getting more Pandemic Invocation value than they are, but... Oh, I completely forgot. I thought we were still aiming for like 55k DPS. So I was like so confused about how they were doing so much more damage than me, but we are only a couple thousand damage off, which is... Yeah, there's because like there's really not much we can do differently. It is a bit confusing on them doing more drained soul damage than me. One of the things though is I have been wondering if it's better to Nightfall proc Drain Soul above Malefic Rapture, but probably Malefic Rapture above. Oh, we could also look at. Yeah, there's a lot of things we can look at. Am I wasting any soul shards? That's one thing I can look at. So I don't think so. Yeah, I'm wondering what is the uptime of that. Well, maybe I should throw in Vile Taint here first. That's The problem is Vile Taint actually is a little bit complicated. So the entire point of Vile Taint is to refresh Agony, But you only want to do that since it costs a soul shard. You only want to do that if you essentially have saved up some Malefic Rapture casts to use with the dot on the Vile Taint, and all the other dots are up. So I don't think you actually want to Vile Taint. I don't think you want to actually open with Vile Taint. Well, maybe you do. Let's just throw Vile Taint in here. But specifically, we do not have logic in here yet for saving up soul shards. Actions plus equals slash Vile Taint if equals dot agony dot remains less than 5. Let's simulate that. See if it looks like it's working properly first. So we went up approximately 1k DPS. Well, they might be Vile Tainting on cooldown, actually. Maybe that is the play. Let's try that. Let's just try a Vile Taint on cooldown. And because it's higher priority than the Agony refresh, we're going to be essentially refreshing Agony for the pandemic invocation damage a little bit less. Just a little bit. So yeah, let's simulate. Uh, 49.7. So yeah, slightly better to Vile Taint on cooldown, supposedly. But the main concern now is, I would say, saving up soul shards so that we Malefic Rupture during the Vile Taint. So I think we're going to we're gonna do a couple little things here. We're gonna say Malefic Rapture. If what's that buff for the free Malefic Rapture called? Forget which one is it? Tormented Crescendo. Still can't get over it's called Malefic Rapture. I don't know what the hell the word rapture means. They used it in like frickin' BioShock, I think. And I didn't know what it meant then either. I always thought it was Malefic Rupture because it was like your damage over time abilities are like exploding inside their body or something like that. If equals buff dot tormented crescendo dot up. So yeah, we're going to well, first of all, let's look at that. And then specifically where we're going to put Drain Soul with the Nightfall proc above regular Malefic Rapture. Before we try to put in the logic to save up for using Malefic Rapture during the Vile Paint. So let's see if this improves our damage at all. $49.7. Wasn't this the same? I did save it, right? We could look at the APL, but I guess it apparently doesn't matter. Although it does give us a little more insight into how many of these free Malefic Raptures we're getting. So about half of our Malefic Raptures, almost half of them are freebies that we're getting from Drained Souls. So that is interesting. But yeah, we need to save for the Vile Taint damage. How do we do that? I guess we need an idea of like how many soul shards per second we generate, and then we gotta figure out like how long before the Vile Taint cooldown comes off a cooldown do we want to like essentially save our Malefic Rapture casts. Because that's when we really want to save the soul shards, but also any free Malefic Raptures we would probably want to save as well. Soul shards generated. Let's see. So about 3/4 of the soul shards are generated from Agony Ticks. Oh, interesting. I'm not sure, now that I think about it, I'm not sure if there's anything. What's the DPS of Drained Soul? When it comes to when the enemy is less than 20% health, should we be prioritizing Drained Soul higher? Drain Soul. No, Drain Soul is very weak. Even with the proc, it's still like, well, you gotta keep in mind the buffs that we'll have as well. But we're looking at 10k DPS roughly with the regular cast. With the proc, actually, I don't know if that takes into account. I don't know if this applies to Drain Soul. There could be other things that are buffing Drain Soul damage. But I'm wondering, is the proc... It'll be like 20k with the proc where it channels in half the time. Wait, no, it's plus 25% on top of that. So it'll be like 25k DPS. But then with the proc and the target less than 20% health, then it'll be about 50k DPS on the Drain Soul. Drain Soul is actually really good at that point. But without the proc and the enemy's less than 20% health, then it's still down at 20k. 20k DPS, I think. So yeah. Thing is, I don't think you ever prioritize it over Malefic Rapture because it can proc free Malefic Raptures. I don't know. Let's try to just figure out how are we gonna save up Malefic Rapture casts these with Vile Taint. So I'm now getting distracted by people. Damn it, people! So yeah, we want to save. And we need an idea of how many soul shards we're generating. So we said unstable affliction. That one doesn't really count. We're getting 45 in a 350-second average fight. Is that right? I guess. Because, I mean... Yeah. Oh, but we're spending soul shards on Vile Taint also. Okay. What a pain. So we are generating about 45 in 350 seconds. What is 350 divided by 45 equals approximately 7.8 seconds per soul shard. That's interesting. So Vile Taint's a 30-second cooldown. How about we try this? Malefic Rapture only during Vile Taint. Yeah. So the problem is Malefic Rapture does have this is only when we're using the soul shards, not the free Malefic Raptures, by the way. So this is we're just trying something that I think is gonna improve our DPS, possibly. So basically we're gonna be drain souling a lot more. And this is gonna cause us to, because of the RNG of our soul shard gain, we might end up overflowing on soul shards a bit. So we'll see how it goes. Dot vile taint dot picking, I think. Okay, that did bring our DPS down. So we don't want to do that. But let's see. Okay, yeah, we do end up capped. Wait. You want to say actually. I think we want to not drain soul during the Vile Taint at all. I think that's probably causing us to lose damage, so let's get rid of that. But not during Vile Taint. And dot Vile Taint. Let's see. 46, 225. Okay, that basically did not matter. How often does nightfall? Yeah, it's not very frequent. Not very frequent. So that still didn't really matter. So yeah, we still need to cast basically we need to cast Malefic Rapture. Well, where's the waste actually? That's really what matters, is where's the waste? So we wasted about 30 soul shards. So maybe we just add in Malefic Rapture if 5 soul shards. If equals soul shards equals 5. Something like that. I don't know if that's quite what they call it. It could be singular soul shard or let's just try soul shard equals 5. See if that works. Okay, I think that's it. So that gets rid of most of the waste of soul shards. Still a little bit. Still wasting several soul shards, so maybe we say if at least 4 soul shards, we're just gonna Malefic Rapture. And so we'll reduce the soul shard waste even more. But we're still essentially saving soul shards for Vile Taint, sort of. Not quite as much, but we're saving at least a few. What am I looking for? The other thing we could do though, what I'm looking for. We could potentially lower the priority of Vile Taint and just say don't agony if Vile Taint is off cooldown, basically. We could do something like that. Because we are putting ourselves in a situation where we are Vile Tainting and then we're casting all these other spells before we actually get to the Malefic Rapturing. I don't think we simulated the 4 or more soul shards yet, so let's see how that goes. Alright, we are at 49,388. I think we're still, yeah, we're still lower DPS than what we had earlier, when we were not even trying to save for the Vile Taint. So that's a little bit annoying. How much overflow do we have? Yeah, we're wasting like one soul shard basically. So not really a problem. Let's see how many soul shards they are wasting. Pretty much 0. So yeah, I feel like one soul shard waste is not really a big deal, but how about we just try to look through if they're doing anything interesting. All right, they have some crazy logic in here. They're doing stuff weird. Oh, they're also doing some extra stuff where they aren't refreshing dots when the boss is almost dead, essentially. Debuff dot. Okay. Yeah, they're not refreshing dots in the last 5 seconds of the fight, basically. And let's see. You're putting a little bit of priority on Drained Soul, specifically to keep up the Shadow Embrace debuff, but that's only happening a couple of times where they are prioritizing it higher. So I don't know if it's actually falling off or not. I really wish we had the info of whether or not that debuff is falling off on enemies. Pretty sure it's not in here. What else are they doing? So they're Malefic Rapturing it. 5 soul shards. Or yeah, they've got multiple different decisions to Malefic Rapture. Oh, they're doing the react thing, so. I don't think that really matters, though. Reacting doesn't really matter because you're gonna drain soul anyways. Nightfall yanked. Fermented crescendo. React. How many vile taints are they casting? 11.28. Yeah, they're not like saving vile taints. Let me see actually how many malefic ruptures? 67. I gotta imagine we're casting like the same number of things. 64. Okay. Oh, that's probably just the ones at the end though. All right, let's put in the logic to not recast dots. Do I really want to do that? To not recast dots at the end of the fight. What is the fight underscore remains? Where is that? Yeah, fight underscore remains. Vile Taint we probably still want to do. Well, maybe not, no. Probably not. Realize how many... I'm wondering how many times are they casting Agony? 10.64. Should be the same, but yeah. Yeah, we're gonna say unless fight ends soon. Uh, Yeah, I'm imagining it falls into that category too. We'll see if they have it on here though. No, they don't have that on there. Because we have that talent. Haunt is 10% damage. Yeah, I don't think Haunt itself gets value. Unless the enemy is going to last like at least 10 seconds. But with this talent down here, increasing the damage of your damage over time effects to all targets. I think because of that, yeah, I'm gonna leave it as you need at least 5 seconds to get value out of. That's what I'm gonna go with. All right, let's sim that. See how that does on my damage. That should theoretically bring us a little bit closer, but it's over the course of a 350-second average fight length, so it's not gonna do that much. Vile Taint. Oh. If equals. Right. If equals fire mains. But let's see how it does. 49,500. Yeah, very small increase, but still worse than what we had before. What was this one? What were we doing here? Was that just the Vile Taint on cooldown as opposed to, yeah. Really sad how you spend a lot of time trying to make it better, and it doesn't make it better. I'm really not trying to make another 4-hour video here, so let's see. Oh, interesting. This is not working. Malefic Rapture if vile taint ticking. I'm pretty sure that's the right syntax. Where is dots? I don't know if it was... Yeah. Picking. Not what I want. So why does it have wild taint? It is never casting this. I'm gonna add in something else also. I'm gonna say before we drain soul with the nightfall proc, I'm also gonna say Malefic Rapture if 5 soul shards up here. I'm gonna prioritize that over the nightfall drain soul. But still, we need to figure out why is the Malefic Rapture during Vile Taint not working. Vile Taint. I think I spelled it wrong. Vile Taint dot. I could try debuff dot vile taint dot up. Wait, didn't I try that earlier and it just did not work? Gave me an error? Well, yeah. It does not work. Alright. It's possible that it's just not getting there, so let's just throw it at the top real quick here and see if it casts. Did I not save it? I did save. Oh, my bad. We have to do the actions equals actions plus equals slash. This is actually just not worth doing it like that. I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna put it here under unstable affliction. Yeah. We'll see how many times it get cast up there. That's interesting. Maybe that's a bug. Uh, well, they they do their things a little bit differently, so they aren't actually checking if file taint is up. How about we go to help? Help! Dots. And we could say dot remains instead of ticking and see if that fixes it. It does, so ticking should work, but yikes. Why is it not working? Deals damage over 10 seconds. Like does, yeah, does tick damage. That is really frustrating. I guess it's a bug in Simulation Craft. I'm using a little bit of older version. This is from like December, but it's not like Vile Taint's a new ability. Like I said earlier, they have not touched Affliction Warlock in quite a while. Been garbage for quite a while. Hmm. Was there a Special Warlock thing. Warlocks. Related to Vile Taint. Doesn't look like it. That's really weird. Malefic Rapture, sorry. If dot vile taint means. Ooh. I know what I can do. Alright, this is gonna be really scuffed, of course. This is not the way it should work, but we know Vile Taint is a 30-second cooldown. We know it is a 10-second duration. So we know that Vile Taint is up if it has more than 20 seconds of cooldown remaining. So we could say if equals cooldown dot Vile Taint dot remains greater than 20, then that means that I think that's the right syntax. Let's go back to simulation craft real quick here. We're gonna we'll go to cooldowns. Where's cooldowns? Cooldowns dot remains. Yeah, remaining duration in seconds. Okay. That should do that, and then okay, and then we're going to change this one as well. Because that wasn't triggering properly anyways. It's the trying to keep track of while taint was up wasn't working, then it wasn't properly doing it while it was down either. Okay. If equals cooldown dot vile taint dot remains. Interesting. So yeah, we are definitely now Malefic Rapturing during Vile Taint. We will now deprioritize it to what it was before, which was down here. And then we'll simulate that. So hopefully this gives us more than 49,700. Okay, we finally improved our DPS. A tiny bit. A tiny bit. We were at 49,500 for a bit, but way earlier. We were at 49,700 something, so we're in the 49,800s now. But I don't really have any great ideas for improving it further. Yeah, our soul shards goes down a lot during the vile taint because we're trying to maximize our malefic ruptures with vile taint. But we can compare back to theirs again. What's our damage looking like? So malefic rapture, 10.4k. Oh, the other thing is we could also higher prioritize when the enemy is almost dead. Malefic Rapture. How'd they do? Malefic Rapture if fight remains less than 4. Could do something like that, but I don't know if that'll matter. I just make sure that you get some use out of those last couple soul shards if you have some at the very end, but let's go back to looking at their damage compared to my damage. Let's see what we got. So I was at 10.4k on Malefic Rapture. They're at 10.3k. Disable Affliction, 9,100. I'm at 8,700. So it's possible. That they are doing better just because they have some specific code to try to keep the debuffs up, which make you do extra periodic damage. So one of them is from Malefic Rapture and one of them is from Drained Soul. I don't know what the uptime is on those. On those debuffs. Spikes should be 30 seconds apart basically for when you're spending soul shards with the vile taint. Or that's for my build, I guess. Yeah, they do something a little different with their logic. Okay, cast time. This. Oh, yeah. That's fine. This doesn't matter. Haunt 18.82. They are prioritizing Haunt above the other dots. Corruption, Siphon Life. Oh, and they're putting Agony above Unstable Affliction. I can't imagine that matters. Let's see here. Yeah. I feel like the main thing they're doing differently is that they are making sure they drain soul. They're putting more priority on drain soul if the Shadowy Embrace debuff isn't up or is expiring soon, and then they're also doing something similar with Dread Touch. Yeah, with Dread Touch, that's expiring soon. But that's getting combined with a bunch of other logic, so I don't know exactly how. Frequently that happens. All in all, I don't know how often those debuffs are falling off, so it's really frustrating. Oh wait, is that information in here? Red. Wait, what? Don't tell me details doesn't track Dread Touch. God damn it. Dread Touch should be in here. Why is Curse of Exhaustion in here? Oh, I'm looking at the... That is not the training dummy fight that I was looking for. That was totally useless information. Back to the single target. So... This... 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 Whoops. I don't know what I was thinking. So we are saving. Oh, we are back up on Wild Taint. I need a thing to... Whoops, I'm an idiot. I need like a weak art. Tell me when that's available so I'm not looking at the action bar like an idiot. Yeah. I have not actually followed this quite properly. But I'm just trying to get an idea. Whoops. Let's just stop right there. Alright, debuffs. Dread Touch. 75% uptime. What about Shadow Embrace? Higher uptime, it did fall off. Yeah, I'm just losing a little bit of damage out of not keeping those debuffs up. But let me look real quick. Is there any other real differences in our damage besides a little bit of dot damage there? Disable Affliction, Agony, Drain Soul. Sorry. 9100, 79, 72. Yeah. Corruption, 35. Paint, 16. Life and Life, 30. Sacrifice, 29. Wait, Corruption? 35. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I already looked at that one. Siphon Life 30. Siphon Life 29. Yeah, all their dots, they just have a little more damage than me. 242. Got a little bit more damage from Pandemic Invocation. What? Whoa. Yeah, I still don't know if I really should be prioritizing Haunt higher. Haunt is the 20% more damage is quite important. I feel like it's more important to refresh Haunt than Corruption or Siphon Life. Although maybe it's not that important with the Pandemic Invocation. We don't get anything out of that on Haunt. But let's try putting more priority on Haunt, but really I don't think our DPS is going to improve unless we specifically focus on the keep forgetting, what's that? Dread Touch. Unless we specifically Malefic Rapture to make sure that we keep that debuff up. I don't think our DPS is gonna really improve, but let's just check real quick here with slightly more priority on Haunt. 49, 7. Yeah, that actually was apparently a DPS decrease. There is, of course, a slight variation, but Haunt, after all the dots are up, is apparently the play. I guess another thing I forgot to really mention is the way I am performing these things is when the little icons pop up, I am actually casting them in the order that they pop up rather than prioritizing them this way. Because if like a couple of them pop up at the same time, and then I cast one and then another one pops up, I don't cast the new one first because it's higher priority. I cast the previous one and then I cast this one. So the way this is written, some of these lower priority ones could actually be falling off. But I don't think that matters as far as just comparing myself to their APL. I think all the damage that I'm missing is just Malefic Rapture at the right time, and also the How they drain soul. Um... So basically, I think we want basically another one that's just like Malefic Rapture. If Dread Touch. Missing or expires soon. And this is just not really something I would realistically keep track of unless I create a weaker for it. We're gonna say debuff dot red touch dot remove. We'll do something like this, which is pretty much what they're doing. There. But we're not doing this drain soul. I'm not gonna do the drain soul to keep the shadowy embrace dot up thing. I don't think. It could be done. It would also be difficult to realistically do in a real world scenario though. But I just want to simulate this. See how it goes. Okay, yeah. That did bring our DPS up. I think we're still a tiny bit behind theirs. Yeah, we're still like 400. 500 DPS behind theirs. But I don't think it's really worth trying to get that last 1% DPS. So interesting. That is apparently getting cast 23 times. Out of how many total Malefic Rapture casts? 67. So about a third of the Malefic Raptures are barely keeping the debuff up. Now, a lot of these other ones would have kept that debuff up anyways. So it's not that 23 of these are actually preventing the debuff from falling off, but I'm a bit surprised that that is that tight. Let's try. I'm gonna make myself a little weaker for this. It's gonna take a minute. But we're gonna just try to program that and execute the build. Or the rotation or whatever. Let's see. So Dread Touch. We need the debuff ID thing. Three, 8, 9, 8, 6, 8. Da, 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 da. 3, 8, 9, 8, 6, 8. And we need to put this visibly. Somewhere where I'm gonna see it. The right. Let's see. Let's first of all X offset 100. And then let's use this icon for it. Rotate it 180. And see how that looks with my other ones. Okay. Let's move it over a little bit. Oh, I'm using that icon for the drain life already. For the other build where I'm actually using the drain life thing. So maybe we choose a different icon. Oh, I'm looking. Almost fucked up all my weak Rs for this spec. Okay. Was I using this one yet for this? No. Okay. Sounds good. Alright, so that's going to be my little reminder to Malefic Rapture for the thing. Oh, I need another one for Vile Tank cooldown though. Hang on. Weak auras. Let's add another Weekara. Let's duplicate this one. We're gonna say vile taint usable. We're gonna say load this trigger. Whoops. Vile taint display is going to be X 100 and negative 100 and vile taint. It's a good icon for vile taint. I'm feeling like we're gonna do this one and then rotate that. And how's that? All right, looks pretty good. All right. So, all right, I think we're ready to try to get the rotation going. So we are going to be doing unstable affliction and agony and corruption and siphon life and haunt. And then, well, except we are vile tainting whenever that's up. Where do I have that in my priorities? Vile taint is after unstable affliction. Okay. So, yeah. It's actually made this one, then this, then this, then this, then this. And then we will be malefic rupturing as long as we have vile taint up. But we are going to end up running out of soul shards. And then we drain soul. But if we get the... But outside of vile taint, we're going to malefic rupture at 5 soul shards. We're going to drain soul if we get the nightfall proc, which is the purple slash on the left. And then we're going to malefic rupture at 4 or more soul shards. Well, basically just 4 soul shards, because 5 soul shards we would have done earlier. And then... Oh, we forgot the malefic rupture. The free insta is over here also. Tormented crescendo. So that'll be a purple slash on the right if that happens. So yeah. I think I got it. Whoops. Accidentally fat fingered. Actually, I think I did order that wrong. Okay. Interesting. We're not really getting as many soul shards as I thought we would be. Now that we are... Now that we're trying to keep that debuff up, we're not really saving soul shards for the Vile Taint as well as I thought we would be. So that's a little bit depressing. Whoops. It's probably still falling off a bit as well. Because of it being, says it's still lower priority than refreshing the debuffs. Those debuffs coming off of cooldown during the Vile Taint just screwed up my Malefic Rupturing during the Vile Taint thing. And then just now we had to do like 5 refreshes. And the thing was, whoops, expiring. So yeah, things are not quite going as well as I thought they would be. I am doing things slightly out of order sometimes also. Because with 5 seconds remaining, you don't have to press these like as soon as they come up. So in some ways, I might be doing better than, oops, that was not the right order. In some ways, I might be doing better than what the rotation is supposed to be. Like, I'm sure it's worse than other ways. It is pretty good though when you get it. If you get at least 3 malefic ruptures during the Vile Taint, I think it's pretty good. Alright. Looks like we were around 47k DPS on here, which is... It's always gonna vary. But that was not too bad. Just want to try the Malefic Rupture if Dread Touch missing or expires soon. It's still falling off a lot because of needing to refresh dots, and I'm feeling like it probably... I don't know. I was thinking maybe it's better than Haunt, but maybe it's not better than Haunt. Haunt is 10% damage to the target and 20% all. Damage over time effects. Whereas this is 30% more damage over time effects. So, yeah, probably... I was thinking maybe just putting this above Haunt, but actually they're probably about the same. Probably doesn't matter. So, yeah, we are just going to leave it at that. So, yeah. I'd say Affliction's very playable. I don't know how much better it is in single target if you try to spec purely single target. And I really don't know. I haven't tried too many different talent combinations. Like I said, I hate Dark Glare. So I don't know if it could be good, but I just hate it. And I really don't think Soul Rot's very good. But there's definitely things you could do a little bit better to, or a little bit different to focus entirely on single target. Because, I mean, the Affliction Warlock is not at the bottom of raid damage charts. Otherwise, they would have probably buffed it. Because the recent round of buffs seemed like it was mostly for raid damage. I really don't think Retribution Paladin needed more damage when it comes to dungeons, at least. But then they got buffs. But yeah, I think we're gonna leave it there. But yeah, Affliction Warlock could certainly do more damage. I think if it did more damage, if they just gave it a big damage buff, it would feel significantly better. Like single target, that is. I feel like single target, definitely does not feel strong. Whereas, like, obviously a Frost Mage, you're hitting those freaking, like 240k, Glacial Spike crits, and you're doing, what was it, like 300k Ray of Frosts? That stuff obviously feels very strong. And I would say Destruction Warlock feels pretty strong. Single target. As well as, yeah, just a couple other ones. Like, you really see the big damage numbers. But you never see that for Affliction Warlock. Like, the biggest damage that you're doing in a single hit is probably some Malefic Ruptures. Yeah. But most of your damage is just small ticks, so it's just really it's like less than 10k ticks. More than 10k on crits, but most of the ticks are less than 10k. So it just feels really weak. So I feel like Affliction needs... It really needs higher single target DPS. I feel it's kind of like basically a dot class feels underpowered if it's not doing higher DPS than
have you and Maratos made contact
oh
with
hell
the
no.
holdout Drakthir settlements? Any news?
A dot class feels weaker than a class that does big hits of damage if it's not doing higher DPS than those classes. That's how I feel. So if you're not like really melting the enemies with your dots, then it's like, why go through all the effort of putting up 5 different dots on the enemies? So yeah, that's gonna be it for the Affliction Warlock. I really want them to get buffs, but I think they also really need to do a bit of a rework. Ever since they created Malefic Rapture, I have not been a fan of it. I would rather just like Corruption do more damage, basically more dot damage and more drain soul damage. And I mean, obviously they should buff Shadow Bolt also. But really well, I should say the main problem is the Soul Star generation. And how you apply Agony in AoE. Basically how Vile Taint works and how you need Vile Taint to apply Agony in AoE, but then you have to manually reapply Agony one at a time to enemies if they survive long enough. And if they don't survive long enough, then you are manually applying agony to the next set of enemies because Vile Taint is still on cooldown. So yeah, it's just a... I guess, yeah, it's really just a nightmare in AoE. Based on how you are reliant on agony to generate soul shards. And I'm okay with Seed of Corruption being super awesome AoE damage, but it still does feel bad that there are not more ways to apply your dots to multiple targets faster. But yeah, single target, it's kind of just a whack-a-mole of refreshing the dots with my talents. But like I said before, if you are not playing Siphon Life, you're playing Absolute Corruption, and then you're not playing Pandemic Invocation, then you're not as focused on refreshing your dots. You still want to keep your dots up, of course. Especially, you don't want a Malefic Rapture without all your dots up. But if you're not playing Siphon Life, your Malefic Rapture does less damage, so you're not as dependent on that. And also, if you're not playing Pandemic Invocation, you'll be definitely... I say definitely, but I guess I don't know for sure. But you'll probably be going for this one, where corruption damage extends your other dots on the enemy, so that you are refreshing them even less often. So that causes you to... ultimately, you end up spending more time on Drain Soul on enemies, which causes it to synergize well with the talent here for Drain Soul damage. So, yeah, there's definitely different talents you could try to do more DPS, but for single target. But the talent build I'm going with, I'd say definitely feels a little weak. But I don't think it's that unplayable, as I keep saying. But it's just definitely like if you just go in a heroic LFG dungeon, then it's basically unplayable. If anyone well geared is in the group, because then everything just dies really quickly. And you don't really have the time to ramp up your damage on the boss. But other than that, it's not super unplayable, but it's just so weak compared to the other options, which is why everybody plays Demonology or occasionally Destruction Warlock. In the right situation, Destruction Warlock does very well. Particularly, I'd say Destruction Warlock is for like really hardcore AoE situations. I think Destruction Warlock is better than Demonology Warlock. But not as good for single target damage. Although that's more so because of, I would say, movement. Just kind of screws the Destruction Warlock more than Demonology Warlock. But yeah, anyways, I think I am done rambling. We are done attempting to play the Affliction Warlock for now. Yeah, just really depressing that it's not better. Please, Blizzard, buff, buff, buff. It needs, like, what kind of buffs does it need? If we were just going number buffs, numerical buffs. I don't want to get into specifics of individual spells, so let's say it needs I'd say it needs like a 10% buff at least for dungeons. The Frost Decay also needed something similar. Well, the Frost Decay spec I was playing, this sim's better than that spec. Let's put it that way. The Frost Decay spec was like 38k DPS, I think. Instead of 50k DPS. So that was it was probably a bad well, it was definitely a bad spec for single target damage. So it's not entirely a fair comparison. But Frost Decay is horribad. But yeah, they gave Frost Decay a 4% buff. They gave Affliction Warlock no buffs. Affliction Warlock really needs buffs. I would say the thing is they were, like I said, I think they were buffing for raid. They don't want to give a spec like Affliction Warlock a 10% buff and then it's overpowered in raids. So that's why I assume that they didn't buff Frost Decay more. So yeah, they need Affliction Warlock just needs super substantial buffs for dungeons, but it's more of a quality of life kind of thing, I guess you could say. The quality of life is like more the type of thing to make it more playable. Like I said, the AoE damage is not that bad. Single target damage, not that bad. Definitely could be better. I still think they should buff it, but buff the damage. But it's more It's more like a how you play the spec that causes problems in a dungeon than the actual damage numbers preventing you from being successful. Yes, yes. End video. End video.